And so, Gav, if you wouldn't mind joining me here, welcome Gav Wood. All right, so first and foremost, you and your team have given me a little bit of a hard time in the past because you are labeled on the Messari website as a smart contract platform. So let's just get this all out in the open and let's try to find a resolution here. Polkadot is a layer 0 interoperable set of blockchains. Can you go into details as to how this is different from a smart contract platform and exactly what the design decisions are that you think situate Polkadot well for this multi-chain future that we've been talking about in these morning sessions?
Sure. Yeah. I think it's you got to think about like what does it mean to be a smart contract platform, right? Mm-hmm. And in my mind, when we architected Ethereum and later when we were designing Polkadot, the really standout thing with Ethereum was that transactions would lead to code execution. Now, this is the same with Bitcoin, right? You send a Bitcoin transaction, it leads to some code execution on the Bitcoin blockchain. Mm-hmm. It basically works out whether some particular transaction output is spendable, but regardless. In Polkadot, it's different. It's fundamentally different. The code execution is guaranteed. It happens once per block. Like when you have a parachain on Polkadot, that parachain executes every block guaranteed, 2 seconds out of every 6. Mm-hmm. That code, that application code, can then decide what it wants to do. Now, what it might want to do is execute some transactions, like look at some input data, do something based upon that input data, verify some signatures, whatever. It can also ignore transactions. It can say, right, I'm not interested in input data this block. I'm just going to execute some other stuff that I want to execute. That execution model is like fundamentally different to this transactive execution model, where your transactions and only your user transactions lead to code execution. That means that things like hard guarantees for scheduling of code execution just can't happen, right? Because you're reliant upon a transaction getting through for any kind of code execution at all. Mm-hmm. So this means that certain applications, say, certain parts of DeFi that need things like timed liquidations, or conditional liquidations, they're very difficult to, if not like impossible, to actually guarantee happening. And that's something that the execution model of Polkadot just allows, like, fundamentally.
Without saying because Polkadot is better, can you help people understand some of the design decisions and kind of differentiation between something like the Cosmos ecosystem or ETH2 as it's conceptualized and designed? We're not there yet, but the goal is to have these shards which sound a lot like parachains.
They do, don't they? And if you look at the underlying designs of Polkadot and ETH2, there are some similarities, which is perhaps not that surprising. A lot of the conversations in 2014, 2015, we're seeing some of the fruits of those now. Okay, there's a few key differences. One is that Polkadots are fundamentally a meta protocol, right? This means that most of the business logic for Polkadot, like the parachains or the shards, all of this kind of stuff, staking, like nominated proof of stake, that's Polkadot's staking system, governance, voting, all this kind of stuff. This is actually encoded in WebAssembly, right? And it's stored on the chain. What this means is that the chain can decide to upgrade this logic whenever it wants. It's not beholden to validator voting or even coin holder voting if you don't want it to be. It's entirely what the logic decides. And this is only possible because it's a meta protocol. It's a protocol that itself runs a protocol. And the base level protocol of Polkadot is super simple. It's actually basically the same for every parachain on Polkadot, including Polkadot itself. It's just a WebAssembly executor, right? It's like a WebAssembly virtual machine. It doesn't include any kind of abstractions for things like accounts. It doesn't even include a cryptocurrency. The cryptocurrency that is the DOT token is actually part of this WebAssembly program. Polkadot's core protocol doesn't include a token. And it's that level of abstraction that allows us to sort of be fairly certain that we're future-proof. There are some other things that sort of differentiate Polkadot. Like, we're working on things like true decentralization, true unstoppability, avoiding things like RPC servers by having light clients actually inside of the browser, so that browser nodes themselves can connect to the main network without having to go through, RPC services like Infer or whatever. In terms of like its comparison to like other chains like Cosmos that really sort of bill themselves as an interoperability, I think it's like not entirely unfair to characterize it that way. But there is a really crucial difference between Polkadot and Cosmos, and that's that Polkadot is it's really like a community of chains that share their security. This means that you get guaranteed secure interoperability between the chains. Basically, the chains can send messages, and those messages are guaranteed to arrive, and they're guaranteed not to be in any way corrupted. They're guaranteed that the sending chain won't have reverted and then finalized some other block later because of some economic attack, for example. And this is, like, I think, crucially different because it allows you to build like truly composable applications rather than just kind of an almost like lossy network. Now we have the equivalent of what Cosmos is doing on Polkadot. We have what we call like bridges and secure bridges that allow chains with varying levels of security to interoperate between each other despite not being part of the same overall securing umbrella. But I personally feel that this concept of shared security is going to be crucial in terms of scaling because it allows economic scalability. It means that the same validator set, the same token, can secure many different kinds of logic, many different kinds of application, many different kinds of chain. And if you can't like do that, then you're going to have to split up your capital pool between the applications and therefore reducing the security of each one.
So you have it's up to 100 parachains at any given time.
At the moment, our prediction is 100, but
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so more or less, 100 different parachains. We already have well more than 100 applications, maybe close to that many other layer ones. Yeah. Is the goal to have all of these parachains have slightly different operating models or application-specific usages, but still kind of be the native Polkadot blockchains, or are you going to be able to interoperate with some of these other layer ones as parachains? How do you see this this plug-in happening? Because there's a lot of developer communities and a lot of money and incentives for developing on Solana or Avalanche or name your other L1 that people are currently building around. So it almost seems like you are going to have a bifurcation of the developer community unless there's clean bridges and plugins to these other parachains.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly initially, these parachain slots, these sort of execution cores, if you want to think of them in that way, I think you're going to see applications deployed one per core because it's just there aren't that many applications, right? We're looking at probably fewer than 100 teams that are ready, really like truly ready to deploy something into a parachain core. As this increases, I think what's gonna happen is those cores are going to become more abstract. So we're already seeing some sort of fairly general cores pushing forward. Moonbeam would be an obvious one, where Moonbeam essentially encompasses an Ethereum chain. And it's an Ethereum chain, so it can host many different applications, all interoperating with each other. But it then can also, these applications can send out away from outside of the Moonbeam Parachain core to the other parachains. So when you start thinking about these parachain cores as platforms in and of themselves that can host many different applications, then you can start to sort of see, okay, it's not just going to be limited to 100 applications, 100 teams. These many teams may end up sort of sharing and working with each other within one of these cores.
Let's talk a little bit about, we talked about shared security, right? That's, I think, an important function of many blockchains today, where you use the underlying token to actually secure the blockchain itself and then the transactions. In Polkadot's case, it's a little bit broad because you're talking about all the parachains. But let's talk about the governance element to it, because upgradability and reaching quorum and actually making iterative improvements on these underlying technologies is not trivial at all. Ethereum is going through a multi-year scaling and kind of iterative approach to get from ETH1 to ETH2. because I'm not, and I don't mean to pick on anybody, but because some of these ecosystems are so nascent, when they have their first scaling challenges and the blockchain breaks, like we saw last week, you actually have to hit quorum to restart and make sure that things come back online. And all of those are inherently political governance decisions, even if everybody's relatively well aligned. So how would you explain the novelty of some of the governance solutions that are now in the new version of Polkadot, and how these pieces fit together, that you can have a little bit more of a seamless upgrade process and not necessarily be politicized around every single decision and design decision for the blockchain itself?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. I think a lot of design decisions are just necessarily going to be politicized, right? Because there will be winners, there will be losers. You take Ethereum's ProgPow conversation, and it's clear that some of the miners aren't especially happy. They've made some investments, and this could compromise that. So inevitably there will be discussions. There will be different sides of the argument. The real need isn't to remove those discussions. It's right and proper that those discussions happen. The real need is to ensure that there is a way of forming a consensus between people on different sides of the table. So there needs to be a decision framework, and this decision framework needs to be robust and reliable and final. Yeah, it needs to be self-enforcing. And this is the same kind of consensus that blockchain has delivered, right? If Alice sends out 2 transactions, each spending the $100 that are in her account, it's very important that we form a consensus over which one of them goes through and which one of them doesn't. And it's all very well, setting up rules and setting up the mechanism in advance for doing that, but it's very important that when we do that, we enforce it. We have just absolute guaranteed enforcement of these rules. And the same is true for governance of chains. We can have discussions and we can vote, or we can use whatever futarchistic mechanism that we want to decide what upgrade should happen. But once it's decided, once those rules have run through, that process has happened, it's super important that it gets followed, that there is some underlying enforcement. As sure as there's an underlying enforcement of in Bitcoin that Alice can definitely only spend her $100 once. There needs to be underlying enforcement that whatever the decision was, properly following the criteria for making that upgrade decision, that it's followed. And this is why Polkadot's a meta protocol, because it's only with a meta protocol that you can really guarantee that these governance decisions actually get followed through, that they're not just a sort of, yeah, we kind of decided to do this thing in this direction, and then validators just kind of go along with it, or they don't go along with it, or some go along with it and some refuse to go. This is no good. So my personal feeling, I'm quite a strong proponent here of on-chain governance, not off-chain governance. And I believe that it shouldn't just be that decisions are made on-chain, but also decisions are enforced on-chain.
All right, let's get to the good stuff. Is Polkadot an Ethereum killer?
Clone? Hell no.
Killer, I said, not clone.
Killer.
Yes.
I don't think the word killer is a very good word to use. I think we need to understand the difference between product market and crypto market, right? It's not that you say, right, we have the FTSE 100 or the NYSE stock index, and we say, right, well, there's Microsoft and there's Chrysler, and is Microsoft going to beat Chrysler? Well, you can say, well, has Microsoft got a higher market cap than Chrysler? But does it matter? Why does it matter? Like, Microsoft's doing one thing. They have one product set, one set of clients, one set of customers. Chrysler have a completely different product set, completely different set of customers. They operate in different industries. And I think we need to start looking at crypto ecosystems from this point of view. Yes, there is one crypto market, the same way there's one stock market, but the different entities that are listed in this crypto market don't necessarily have to be competing in the product sense. And my personal feeling is that parachains, for the reasons that I just explained, are a fundamentally different product to smart contracts.
Yep.
They're a different abstraction level, and different teams will find the different products useful. And this is why Polkadot, in addition to having parachains, also has smart contract parachains that are marketing their services and their tokens and all the rest of it to teams.
It's a little bit of a leading question. I'm being intentionally provocative, obviously, but I think there are so many projects that have been invested in for years now. Much of the infrastructure has been built. We mentioned some of them, Polkadot included. I guess Ethereum killer is overused, and I think that's a relic of maybe a couple of years ago, because all of the Ethereum killers, or Ethereum and friends, whatever you call it, they're a little bit more mature now, and you're actually starting to see real applications built on top of them. So it certainly doesn't seem like it's a winner-take-all market. It's probably not even a winner-take-most in terms of power law distribution, at least in my opinion. Yeah. But as you're thinking about success metrics for the Polkadot community and for all the other parachains that you have, what are you seeing so far this year? And I guess what would you expect over the course of the next 12, 18 months to be some of the applications that are either born natively on Polkadot or that migrate over? And what should people be looking out for as developers, as business folks, thinking about the merits of this as kind of critical infrastructure that's going to underpin their the blockchain-oriented parts of their business?
Well, I don't know. When I started coding Ethereum, all that time ago, like late 2013, it was, I did it for one reason. I did it out of curiosity. I wanted to see if this idea could work. And when I started Polkadot, again, quite a long time ago now, like coding it in late 2017, I did it for a similar reason. I wanted to see if this parachain model, if this idea where you've got heterogeneous shards, not the homogeneous shards that Ethereum and some of the other sharded protocols are sort of trying to push for, would what it could deliver, how it would change things, if it changed that. I mean, you don't know until you do it, right? And it's the same reason. So in terms of like the next 12, 18 months, I would hope that we see some really new kinds of applications, the kinds of applications that, because of the different abstraction, the different like host execution framework that Polkadot gives, I would hope that we see some like really novel applications that we don't sort of see on smart contract platforms, just because the smart contract platform isn't quite the right place for these applications to exist.
I have about 15 more questions, but we only have 2 minutes. So I don't think we're going to be able to do even a lightning round in that amount of time. Maybe we'll close with, is there anything that keeps you up at night right now? This could be like a meta comment about crypto in general. It could be about Polkadot. What are some of the things that need to be de-risked? And how do you ultimately see the next evolution of crypto? It seems like we're at an inflection point in terms of usage. We've hit mainstream adoption in some metrics, in some respects, with DeFi and some of the other early Ethereum applications. But now we're starting to really hit bottlenecks on the scaling front. And that's where I think the opportunity is for Polkadot, for some of the other blockchains, some folks that we're going to bring on stage in just a minute here for another panel discussion. As you just take a 30,000-foot view of the world, what do we have to solve next? Maybe is the closing question here.
I think one of the things that I'm excited for over the next year or so is really bringing on users that don't have and don't want to have crypto holdings. And this is something that I think Polkadot's uniquely in a position to capitalize on, primarily because it doesn't have this users need to pay fees to the platform model. So you want to transact on Ethereum, users have to hold Ether to do that. That means your applications have not just to get users interested in that application proposition, they also have to get users to actually get some Ether to use their application. And this, I think, is a huge barrier, and one that I would like to see teams within the Polkadot ecosystem remove completely by having, for example, users prove maybe through an SMS maybe through other social media accounts that they are an individual person, and then giving them transactability for free. So not relying on this need to hold tokens to actually use a crypto application. And yeah, I think that's really a needed hurdle to get over before we can truly get to mainstream adoption.
The holy grail of, much like the internet, having people use crypto without knowing that they're using crypto.
Exactly.
And you can tell that we've done this quite a few times ourselves, because we are at 5 seconds left, 4, 3. That's about as well timed as you're going to get a panel. So thank you very much, Gavin. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, man. All right.